Hello folks, Dave here again, and welcome to the Starter Set Saturdays episode on Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition. It's been a bit of a break between Starter Set Saturday videos. It's kind of been a warm summer. Like I'm down here in my basement and the dehumidifier's off and everything, and I still, am quite warm down here. I do have a nice cold beverage to help me through the video here. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving into this one. So this and the next video in the series have already been decided by viewer polls. And the next one's actually going to be kind of fun because I'm going to connect that to some other videos. I might make like a week-long theme of it. So we'll discuss that when the time comes, which will be, not in this video. So as is always the case with, or as is the case that I'm trying to establish, because I definitely didn't do this early in the series, but when I'm reviewing like later editions of established role-playing games, I really want to do these videos in a vacuum, right? Like I don't want my opinion of the Star Trek Adventures 2nd Edition starter set to be swayed by my thoughts on the Star Trek Adventures 1st Edition starter set. So I won't be really comparing the additions or anything like that, or any of the changes that were made in this video. So this is just going to be my thoughts on this starter set in isolation, without consideration to any other sets or games that are out there. So this released in December of 2024 is what I was able to gather, the best I was able to gather online. The MSRP on the Modifius website was $42. That is, I believe, US dollars. On Amazon, I was able to see it listed for $45 US dollars, and 401 Games in Toronto had it listed at $29.95 Canadian. However, at the time that I looked that up, it was out of stock. I don't know if it's been restocked since then. This is, it's been a few days since I looked up the pricing information. So yeah, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. This fall at HellCon, a convention I didn't think I'd ever want to go back to, but Jonathan Frakes is going to be there. So I already have a Commander Riker Star Trek figure on card that I'm going to take and see if I can get him to autograph that. It's going to be something I'm kind of looking forward to. So I've been a Trek fan ever since I was a kid. I'd watch Next Generation basically right around the time it debuted. I'd watch it with my grandfather. Like, I have fond memories of just like laying on the couch in the living room, watching, Star Trek with my grandfather in his favorite chair there. And the one I remember the most is the episode where you had like the two Picards, the one that was sort of time shifted. They were kind of stuck in this like vortex thing, and I just remember because it was like around Valentine's Day, so I remember like just sitting there eating cinnamon hearts and watching Star Trek. Just weird, the things that you kind of remember. But anyway, so that's kind of my attachment, is like the next gen era. The 2nd edition of Star Trek Adventures, even though it's not really based necessarily in a specific time frame, the adventure in this booklet is sort of like the original series era, or like the Strange New Worlds, like Discovery, Strange New Worlds type of era, which I haven't really watched either of those, Discovery or Strange New Worlds, and truthfully, I wasn't the biggest fan of the original series. It's just hard to get past some of the special effects, and anyway, like I know it's sacred for a lot of people, and if you love it, that's awesome. Like, if this is your favorite, time period for Trek, that's amazing, and I really, I respect that. But for me, I'm a TNG era person. So anyway, let's get into the review. So the first thing that we have is the physical production quality of the products here. So the first thing we have is a nice sturdy cardstock box. So this is a nice thick card for the box there. I'm not particularly worried about it ripping or tearing, and the lid does slide off fairly easily, which is nice. Like, some of them grip on like it's like it's a death grip. We do have custom D20s in this particular starter set. So they have like the Starfleet insignia on the one side, because this is a roll under system. So rolling 1s are good, rolling 20s are bad. And you get 5d20 here with this, and it's a nice like teal dice. And I do like the teal color. Yeah, I think that's teal. But yeah, I do like the color of the dice there. We also have the booklets. So let's take a look. What we have, so the booklets are staple bound, but the cover is made of like a sturdier, like a thicker card material, and the pages themselves are also nice, and they're nice thick and nice glossy pages as well. So that's really good to see. Let's get this out here. The game, the character, sheets and like the ship information, because again, this does like take place mostly in like that original series era. There's also cardstock tokens that fell out of the things really easily, but these are actual like cardstock. Like they're not just regular paper, and they'll have like the character information on the one side, and then they'll have pertinent information on the other side. So like the ship has like what the ship can do in ship combat, and you got quite a few characters here. So you have Commodore Nelazen. So it's like the captain character, which normally you don't get the, like, well, I shouldn't say that, because, like in a lot of situations, I find that the, like sci-fi RPGs will give you like the rest of the command crew, like the first officer, the pilot, the tactical officer, like the security officer or whatever, but they tend not to give the captain, so that way like nobody has like supreme authority over everybody else. But here we actually do have like the captain character, which is kind of neat. We got our commanders, Commander Xanthus. I'm not going to read all the names here, but he's an Andorian. And I guess the way that things work here is when you're called on to make a roll, you get to roll 2d20. You add an attribute along to a department. And if you combine those numbers together and you roll that number or below, then it's considered a success. And you can also have like focuses. Where are they here? Yeah, so energy weapons, hand-to-hand combat, infiltration. So if any of these focuses apply to the roll that you're making, then whatever your department number is, if you manage to roll that number or below, I think it counts as like an extra success. And some things will require that you get more than 2 successes, so you might have to purchase separate dice. You can bank extra successes as momentum points, or you can even give the game master what's called threat points that they can use to make things more complicated later in the scenario, or to add reinforcements to encounters, things like that. But there's going to be times where you just like to succeed on a task, you need more dice than you have. So it's kind of a cool. I really like the system. Overall. So that's, I guess, the basic explanation of how that works. And then we got our different characters here. Lieutenant Commander. We have our science officer. We have Beta Z. So yeah, quite a few different characters there. And then we just have some more like game aid cards. And again, these are all like really nice cardstock. They are not they're not just like thin paper. So that's really cool to see. And again, you've also got these tokens, these cardstock tokens, which I'll be truthful, I don't know exactly what they're for. They might be for like starship combat. They are double-sided usually, or sorry, they're not double-sided. But they'll have like, you got some that are used for determination, which I guess is the new word for momentum. Or you got the oh no, here we go. So we got the threat tokens there, and then we got the like, I think this is momentum. Anyway, you do have some tokens there. They I didn't punch any of these out. They just all fall out of this the sheet that they were in really easily. So yeah, a nice staple bound books again. We got our dice, and we'll just close this back up again for a second here. So overall, when it comes to the production value, they did a really solid job with everything. Really went sort of above and beyond the expectations of, you know, like they could have done just like soft, like the same material for the covers for the booklets could have been the same as the pages. You know, they could have done like just thin paper, like cheap paper for the character sheets, stuff like that. But they definitely went well above and beyond. I'm really impressed with the production quality of this. So I'm going to give the production category an 8 out of 10. And then we got the presentation. So again, the presentation is very nice. So if you know, this is something that's going to catch your attention. It's going to catch your eyes, and you know, it is like a really nice looking, you know, product here. There's some fantastic artwork throughout the books here. So let's take a look at the well, probably not the campaign booklet, but let's take a look at the starter set. So like there's just some nice artwork kind of scattered throughout here. There are some pages where it's all text, but you know, they even have like the Lower Decks style and thrown in there as well, so it's really cool. And even though the scenario takes place kind of in that like Strange New Worlds era, they do have like some artwork that shows like the more modern like TNG era and stuff like that as well, which is also really cool to see. There's some like Discovery stuff in there too. So yeah, the artwork in here is pretty solid. You know, like I said, it is very eye-catching. This particular cover is also the cover art. So the rule booklet cover art is the same cover art for the actual core rule book, which is kind of like a nice little connection there. And again, like the character art and stuff on those is really nice to see as well. The cardstock tokens for the threat and momentum, like they're nice. A bunch of them will have like these different logos on them, like Klingon Empire, Romulans. And truthfully, I'm not entirely sure like the Cardassians. And truthfully, I'm really not sure exactly what it is you use those tokens for. Like there's no player character tokens that have like the character artwork on it. The closest that you get would be like these Starfleet or Federation logo tokens there. And when I was looking through the rule booklet, I didn't find, or I couldn't see where they describe like what to really use the tokens for. In the adventure booklet, there is like a combat map with some zones and stuff in there, but like there's no way to distinguish the player characters, like who's which character, and like it. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I do wish that there was just like a combat map, and that some of the tokens would have had like the pre-gen characters' names on them, or like at least their image, like their faces from the character artwork, and that you could have used the tokens along with that. So I don't know. Like it's a cool inclusion that they're there, but I don't know exactly what they're for. And again, they don't have a map and stuff with it to make like the combat a bit more visually. I like to use minis when I'm running games, because the thing that I've noticed when you're not using minis is the first question that always gets asked on everybody's turn is, okay, how far is the nearest enemy? You know, are there like groups of enemies attacking, you know, somewhere? Like there's kind of stuff like that, you know, always gets brought up, but if you got the stuff right in front of you, I just find you don't get those. I know some people love theater of the mind. I'm actually not truthfully a fan of that term, because it has like an air of superiority about it. And like if you don't use minis, great. If you do use minis, great as well. Like play the game the way that works for you. But I like to have minis and stuff like that on there. So the tokens, I'm not entirely sure what their usefulness is in this box, and like I said, I was trying looking through the rule book and I just couldn't find it. It is possible that I skipped over it, you know, like when I was looking through the pages. But anyway, I was debating between giving the presentation a 7 or an 8. You know, I think the artwork is really fantastic in it. I like the nice colorful box art there. Like there's a lot of purples on here, and purple is my favorite color. But when I set out to do this series, I had mentioned that whenever I was debating between two different scores, I would always take the lower of the two. That way I can be sure, right? So I'm going to give the presentation a 7 out of 10. All right, so up next we've got the rules quality here. So we're going to go back to our rules booklet. Maybe move this stuff off to the side there. And also maybe take a a quick drink just to cool down a bit. Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Also, the thing I should have mentioned about the cover art that I really like is that it's got like all the different eras on there, like Enterprise, Next Gen, Strange New Worlds, the original series movie era costumes, and like the DS9 style. So there's some cool stuff there. I do like the art style. But anyway, for the actual rules quality here, the rules booklet is about 48 pages. Yeah, 48, including the quick reference stuff on the back, which is also really cool to see. The rules they're very well explained, pretty easy to follow. You also get like examples, and you get like where are we here? There's like flow charts of stuff as well that you kind of see throughout. I may have already gone past it, but you do get like examples of using the different rules and how they function, and it lays things out very, 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 very easy to follow, and just easy to pick up, right? So I think they did a really good job with the explaining the rules against a 2d20 system. So you automatically start with two 20-sided dice that you get to roll. You add an attribute to a department, or your sort of like your two different abilities there, and you have to roll under the combined number. And again, if you have a focus that applies, you can get extra successes by rolling the department number or less on your d20. I think a natural one is also always considered to be 2 successes. So if you have the focus, it just gives you a wider range of numbers you can roll for those 2 successes. There is also, for example, there's like difficulty, and I don't know if I've probably already gone past some of that stuff there. But difficulty, when you're assigning like a task, the standard difficulty would be like 1 or 2, so you might just need a single success to overcome a particular challenge. But they may be trying something where it's like, okay, they were trying to do something maybe really quickly, or they're trying to like repair a system that desperately needs it. So there's the difficulties there. So you can sort of assign what the number is. Like typically, like you probably won't be going too often more than like 2 or 3, but there are definitely some situations where there might be like you might have 4 or 5. So you definitely can't get 5 successes on 2 dice. So again, like you can, if you get more successes than you need, then basically you can store them, and that stores as momentum. And the way momentum works is you can spend 1 point of momentum to add an extra die to your pool. You can add, if you wanted to add another die using momentum, like the first one that you add costs 1 point. The second one that you add costs an additional 2. So 1 for the first die that you're adding, and then 2 for the second die. And you can add up to a third die for 3 points. So you have to spend 6 momentum total in order to add an extra 3 dice. And I think 5d20 is the maximum that you can roll for any given task. Now, if you don't have enough momentum, you can also, whatever points you need in excess of whatever momentum you have, you can also just give to the Game Master as threat. And it's the same numbers, right? So if you don't have any momentum and you need to roll 5 dice because it's a very critical situation that you find yourself in, then like you give the Game Master 6 threat and be able to add those 3 extra dice. 1 point for the first, 2 points for the second, and then 3 points for the third. So 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6. So that's kind of how that works. So yeah, getting extra successes, it's really great that you can store them, because there's a lot of games where, once you've completed the roll, even if you did get extra successes beyond what you needed, you just don't really get to like do anything with it. And with this one, there are like difficulty 0 tasks, but for those ones, typically speaking, you don't roll for them. So that I don't think there's very many instances where you would roll for a difficulty 0 task, unless the Game Master just wants to be really generous and try to give you some momentum to use later on. So yeah, I mean, like I said, the rules are explained quite well. It's something that the Game Master... The one thing I'll say about the system, though, that might be a little bit more difficult than some of the other ones, is that this is not a system designed for, like, if you fail, that's it. It's not one of those things where like this the adventure depends on your ability to succeed, and if you fail, then you're screwed type of situation. So there's a lot of situations where they may fail the role, but they still can succeed on the task with some sort of complication. And as the game master, you need to be able to think on your feet enough to think of what that might be. And that can be pretty simple things, like, for example, if you are trying to, open up a door that's, been locked, you could, succeed, or if you fail on the roll, you could still get the door open, but let's just say your plan was to get the door open, run through it, and then close it behind you, so like seal it back behind you, so that like enemies that are pursuing you can't catch up to you. The complication could be that you get the door open, but then you can't get it closed again because like the mechanism's just completely screwed on it. If you're trying to land like a shuttlecraft in the docking bay and you're under some form of duress, like you might succeed, but you might crash land. So like some players might take some damage, or you might like damage the nacelle on the shuttlecraft, so it can't be used to escape, and you'll need to find something else. So you do have to kind of be able to think about things like that. If you're operating a computer console, trying to do something, you might succeed, but the console itself basically like burns out, and you won't be able to use that console again unless you do like a repair work on it, and sort of things like that. So the game master, you do have to be able to think on your feet a little bit, which can feel intimidating for like a brand new first time GM. So the thing that I would highly recommend is like if you don't know what to do, you can also just take the instead of like providing like one of those consequences, you could also just give yourself threat to sort of like buy it off. Like the players can basically like bribe you or pay you off not to have some complication occur. So like that's a thing that you could also just like take the threat for, or like don't be afraid of consulting with the players and trying to come up with something that you think makes sense, right? Like maybe you're trying to get life support back online on a ship and you fail the roll, so like maybe you get it to function temporarily, but then it completely blows, and so you've added like maybe a couple of hours of usable air into the system, but that's about it, right? So there's kind of things like that you can sort of work with each other on. Don't be afraid to tap into your players' ingenuity as well, because like it is a collaborative. Role-playing games are meant to be like a storytelling thing. It's meant to be sort of collaborative and give and take. So don't be afraid of that. But the fact that it is kind of a succeed with sort of a complication system on a lot of the die rolls that you're making, except for like attack rolls can just miss, right? But other things, right, you don't want them to be locked out of the adventure because they failed a single roll. So, it is something that you do have to kind of be aware of, the success with the cost type of situation. And just, try to think on your feet. And if you can't think of anything, either take the threat to use later or like, consult with the players and try to come up with something. They also do include ship combat in here as well. And it's good to have that in like the starter set because, again, I'm not reviewing this with any specific sci-fi RPGs in mind, but there are sci-fi RPGs that I have a starter set for, and they don't include the ship combat that's like in the core rulebook. So like Star Trek, ship combat is a core part of the game. So it is good that it is in here as well. And it gives you like all the list of actions, how damage is dealt, how to repair the damage. And an example, which this here is such a blessing. I find that when it comes to like RPG books, you can read the descriptions of the rules and be like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But seeing it listed as an example is so much easier to follow. So it's great that that's there as well. So you get basically the full sense of what like the game is. You get the starship combat, you get the regular combat, you get exploration stuff. So I think they did a really solid job with the rules quality. It does lack character creation because it is all pre-gen. And like I said, I never want to take points away for lacking character creation, but I've always said that I would add a point for character creation. And if you had the ability to like quick start your own or quick build your own characters, In this set, I would have given it like an 8 out of 10 for sure. Again, I was kind of debating between an 8 or a 7. So I just decided ultimately I'm still going to give the rules quality a 7 out of 10. If I were to use like half points or stuff like that, it definitely would have been a 7.5, but I don't want to get into that. And again, if I'm debating between two numbers, I always take the lower one. And if I would add a point for character creation, like I wouldn't say that the rules in here would be a 9 out of 10, because that's like, approaching like perfection type of thing. So like, and I would have given it an 8 out of 10 with character creation. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for the rules, but super easy to follow. And yeah, you'd be able to pretty much run this out of the box. Like the Christmas morning test, I think is what it's called. Like how quickly after you unwrap the present can you be playing the game? And with this one, I think it would be relatively quick. So again, you also have like the player aids on the back of your card, your character sheets, and there is like the quick reference stuff here as well. So you get plenty of game aids to help you along with that. So I consider it an 8 out of 10, but again, whenever I'm debating between two different scores, I do end up going with the lower number just to play it safe. So 7 out of 10 for the rules quality. And now we've got the adventure quality. And so the adventure booklet is actually pretty beefy here at about 58 pages. The player characters are, they're all crew members on a Constitution class starship there, the USS Challenger. So like if you watched Enterprise, for example, I think the Challenger, or no, maybe it was actually, I think it was the Columbia, never mind. But a lot of like the Star Trek ships have like taken the names of like the shuttlecraft, stuff like that in the past. So it's kind of cool to see that there as well. The premise that is set up is that you receive a distress call from a floating city, the floating city of Cressida, where they encounter a system-wide threat. Throughout the adventure, the PCs will have to struggle with ship systems failing at the worst possible times, wrestle with the Prime Directive, because that's always, a thing that's in Star Trek as well. And they may even have to face ship-to-ship combat. In addition, there are also, so you get like your main story, but what's also cool about this one, and what kind of put it over the edge for me, is that there are, at the end of the book, there are mission briefs. So I think this is that's part of the main scenario here. But there's 3 mission briefs that you can add into this scenario that just give a little bit extra stuff for some of your characters to do. So you got one here that is designed for like science officers, and then the other 2 are for like security officers. And again, keep in mind, this is like the original series era, so the red uniforms were like security, and in operations, I think was the term for it. And then the gold uniforms were for command. In the Next Generation era, they actually flipped those around so that it was gold uniforms for security and operations, and then red for command. I prefer the red for command, but this is for security. So you get 2 security ones here, and then you get 1 sciences. I do kind of wish, because there's 3 of them, and there's the 3 divisions, I do wish that one of these was actually more for command. But it is still really cool because you're adding extra stuff to flesh out the adventures even further. So, like, it's kind of nice to see, like, oh, you could just run the basic scenario if you want, but you could also include these extra little side quests to give your players more stuff to just do throughout the scenario. So I thought that was really, really well done. And again, I'm gonna give, so for the adventure quality, the adventure premise is, kind of a cliche, but the enemy is very interesting. The effects after the initial encounters and the little side briefs, or the side mission briefs, that stuff being included there as well to expand the story. I'm going to give the adventure quality, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, because you get like a three-act adventure, a pretty solid, again, 58-page adventure booklet, which is, quite a bit of stuff there, and it's pretty much chock full of the adventure. Like, it's not one of those things where you get a lot of like descriptions, or you get a lot of stuff that doesn't really pertain. You get right into the adventure quickly, and there's just tons of stuff to do in here. Again, I love the mission briefs. I just wish one of them would have been for command. That way, each division would have had one. But if the other ones are still pretty good, cool to have here as well. And so yeah, this is where I decided to. And again, because I had like the last two categories where I was debating between a 7 or an 8. And ended up going with the lower number. I decided with this one, I was really impressed with it, so I'm going to give a full 8 to the adventure quality. And then we've got finally the value for your dollar. So let's just say we're going to use the base price of $40 US for this particular box set. So for that, I think you're going to get about 6 to 8 hours of gameplay out of this starter set, especially if you include the mission briefs on top of the standard scenario that's in there. So you're probably going to get a couple of sessions, solid sessions of gameplay, depending on how long you play for. You're probably going to get a couple sessions of gameplay out of this. The dice are nice, the nice inclusion in there as well, and like everything is nice, high quality. You could use these characters and sort of carry them on if you get the core rulebook and create your own scenarios going forward. You'd still be able to use the characters and the ship in this box set going forward. So overall, I think they did a pretty solid job. Again, I'm going to give the value for your dollar. It would have been nice if they would have had, again, the only thing I think would have like really pushed this over the top for me is if they would have had combat maps for like some of the situations that the player characters face on like away mission type of thing, like when they beam down to the planet and or the floating city, and they're dealing with like the encounter there. It would have been nice to have had like a map with the tokens that have the player characters' faces on them, that you'd be able to use for like the combat situation, as well as one for the space combat would have been nice as well if they would have had like a map for that. Having a map inside the booklet is okay, but it feels like that's something that the game master's probably still going to keep to themselves, and the players aren't going to be able to see it or have access to it. So if it would have had like a map, or like a double-sided map, and some player character tokens and some enemy tokens, like I don't know why they have like Klingon tokens and Romulan tokens, and for like I think it's Ferengi and like Cardassian tokens. I don't know why all that stuff's in there. Because it's not really pertinent to the scenario, and maps with like actual tokens of creatures would have been more appreciated, but you're still going to get a lot of good use out of this box. So again, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. So for an overall, we had production was 8 out of 10, presentation and rules quality as well as value were 7 out of 10, and the adventure quality was an 8 out of 10. Overall, this gets a 7.4 out of 10. And keep in mind, when I give something a 7, that's a good score. 5 is bare minimum. 6 is like, they kind of did take steps beyond what was expected of them, and you notice it, but it maybe wasn't pulled off the greatest. 7 out of 10 is where they start getting to the point where like it goes beyond my expectations of what you think of when you kind of think of like a starter set. So a score of 7, like a 70% is still good. Like I don't know why. Again, I think it's kind of a video games review industry thing where if something gets less than a 9.5 out of 10, it's somehow considered to be terrible. But a 7 out of 10 is a very, very solid score. 7.4, in fact, is a very, very solid score. And you're going to get, a great introduction to the Star Trek universe. You got lots of characters to choose from. The rules are well laid out and explained. You get a really cool adventure to play through. The only thing, again, like character quick start, like if you could have had like quick creation rules for like to be able to make your own characters, that would have been nice. But it's not the end of the world. It's definitely not a deal breaker. And it doesn't have the maps or anything like that I would have liked, the maps and tokens. But other than that, I can't really think of anything like really negative that I'd say towards it. A very solid starter set. And I would definitely run this in a heartbeat. Like if somebody's like, I want to try Star Trek Adventures, I would go for this right away. I'm really, a really big fan. of Star Trek Adventures. I do like the second edition version of the role-playing game, and the starter set is a very solid addition to your collection. You're going to get a couple of great sessions of gameplay out of it, and you're going to get a great introduction to an amazing, universe of possibilities. So I definitely recommend checking this out if you are a fan of the Star Trek series, and you want to get into like a Star Trek tabletop role-playing game. Star Trek Adventures, I cannot recommend it enough. And very solid starter set. Definitely worth checking out as well. Especially since you can get it below that retail price. Again, I went with the $40 because that's close to what you see on Modiphius's website. And other game stores might charge that. So if you can get it for cheaper, like if this was the 401 games price of $30 Canadian, which probably would have been about $24 US, then the value would have gone through the roof. But $40 US for everything that you get here is pretty fair. And 7.4 out of 10. You're going to have a good time with this one. So thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, have you played Star Trek Adventures first or second edition? If so, what were the characters that you played? What was the era that you played in? Let me know all that stuff in the comment section. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And we will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.